Hello and welcome to the sixth casting. I hope this finds you well. Like all castings before and those to come, this one is going to be very off the cuff. However, I do have some sort of structure that I am following this week, as I am going to be discussing and extrapolating further on one of my Twitter threads regarding the tarot and the alchemical work, the representation of the alchemical work through tarot. And in order to explain and expand upon what I have presented in this thread a little bit further, I will be reading directly from the Book of Alchemy, as well as Franz Barden's Introduction to Hermetics, just to, first of all, to give you two resources that really explain the alchemical work quite poignantly, and then also because they have it down pat. They've explained it clearly and concisely, and I'm not going to just make something up to fit the narrative. So without any further ado, I will start with the first post, which from the thread, which is 369. 3 being the alchemical fire, the spirit of ether, and I have Aries there. 6 being the nourishing milk, the blood and the gluten, the Lord of Triumph and light, and then Cancer. And then 9 being the inner light, the magus of the voice of light. And the number 3 is in reference to the Fool card. The number 6 is in reference to the Chariot. And the number 9 card is in reference to the Hermit. The second post is: the first matter in the great work lies within man himself, the ether. It has no physical organ, yet when it is in harmony it becomes fixed to the physical body. The all is mind, the universe is mental, the Kabbalion. From the ether everything comes, and in it is limitless time and space. And to explain that a little bit further, I'm just going to read a passage from Franz Barden's Introduction to Hermetics, where he says, the Akasha, or etheric principle. When describing the elements, I have mentioned several times that they originated from the etheric principle. Therefore, the etheric principle is the highest, the mightiest, the most unimaginable and primordial existence, the original cause of all things and everything created. It is the causal sphere. Therefore, the Akasha is spaceless and timeless. It is uncreated, incomprehensible, and undefinable. The different religions call it God. It is the fifth energy, the primordial energy. It is that which we created everything and keeps everything in equilibrium. It is the source and the purity of all thoughts and ideas. It is the causal world in which everything created maintains itself, beginning with the highest of spheres downward to the lowest. It is the quintessence of the alchemists. It is the all in the all. And if you have listened to a few of my other castings, I do talk about the imagination quite a bit, and this is essentially what the causal principle is inside man himself, and that is what they are talking about in the Kabbalion. With all is mind, the universe is mental, and the great work lies within man himself, the ether. So that is the etheric principle, and the reason why he is represented, or the Fool is represented by Aries, is because Aries is the I am. It is the fire of the mind. It is the first house of astrology, which is the self. The first house in astrology represents you. It is quintessentially you, and it is the fire in the head, the I am, the Yahweh, if you will, and the tetragrammaton. And he who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path to mastery, the Kabbalion. The third post is within the stone you seek is the mental fire, that Mercury. The stone is the extracted spirit of our indestructible body. So again, we're talking about this causal principle, this ether, the Akashic, the spirit, the Godhead, whatever it is that you wish to call it. And the next part that I just want to draw upon from Franz Barden's work is he comments on this quite specifically. He says the head to the fire principle, the abdomen to the water principle, and the chest to the air principle. And this will come back around in this thread. And the air principle is that mediation between the water and the fire. And he says, it is obvious how accurate they were with this arrangement of the human body, because everything that is active, everything that is fiery takes place in the head. The abdomen, however, is the opposite, and it is watery. It's the elimination, it's the activities of the liquid, and the chest is subject to air. It is a mediating principle and has a mediating function, which I will get into in the next part, because the next part of the thread is the fire that you seek is behind an impenetrable crust of the jewel that no mortal man can faint. Only the worthy adept can see behind the veil. And then I have the veiled truth there, and a few sculptures of women with veils across their face. And in the occult, the veil is a very prominent symbol and a prominent theme. If we think about Twin Peaks, you see Agent Cooper piercing the veil in the Black Lodge quite frequently, and piercing the veil in many other TV shows, doors as well. You know, there is that going into this other realm, or you're looking behind appearances, you're looking behind the scenes, and even in the Matrix, there is the key maker, and then all these doors that you can open to find all these different areas of the Matrix. So from the Book of Alchemy, in chapter 2, it says, success in alchemy depends on the discovery of the first matter. Yet discovery does not mean to find, but to uncover or reveal, as to open a book. And it says, the high priestess is herself a symbol of the first matter, and refers not to the quest for something in the world around us, but rather the unveiling of the true nature of something within us. And as I said in the post, there is a reason why she is the second card. The magician is the first card, and he is the grossest form, or the grossest representation of all of the individual elements. He has the pentacle, the wand, the cups, and the swords, which all represent those elementals. And the high priestess is the second card because she is the form of the first matter, which is that milk, which is the thing that nourishes us. It's something that we can start to digest, and she is seen as this pious character, much unlike her sister, who is the Empress, who is Venus, who I will talk about as well. But she's clothed in this veil, and she's the representation of looking behind appearances. And it says in the Book of Alchemy, this unveiling is an act of recollection. The secret of the first matter is hidden deep in the subconscious, and the first step of the great work of alchemy is yoga, to bring to the surface, to yoke something, to bring it about. And the moon is the representation of the milk, and in Vedic astrology, the moon is this sensorial experience, and that is why the moon is actually the most important placement in one's chart, and it's also one of the most influential transiting planets as we go through our day-to-day, because it has this waxing and waning nature. It controls our emotions, our desires, and desire is where the seat of our power is, to be able to wield this to wield this energy, to be able to make things manifest. And as I said, the moon is very influential over us, and as it moves through each zodiac or each nakshatra every day, or every 2.5 days for the zodiac, and every day and a bit, or less than a day and a bit for each nakshatra, she is unlocking these vibrational potential of these energies for us to be able to become in sync with them, and to make use of their power in our lives. And I will touch on these cycles maybe in another casting, because it is just so interesting, the role of the moon over the masses. And again, the moon does rule the masses. You know, it has great magnetic pull over the water, and like I said, she is nourishing. The moon is nourishing, and she is the child of the elements and gives freely to all, on all planes, and she is the pre-existing and cosmic mother. She is Gimel on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So if you look at the tree of life, you have Keter at the top, which is where the Fool is. He is the sun behind the sun. He is Sirius. And then you have Gimel coming straight down from Keter, and she is the longest path on the tree of life, and she carries the water across the desert, and that is why she is Gimel. She is the camel, and camels produce milk as well for their young, and she is above and below the abyss. So she is in the mental realm, which is just above Gabora and Chesed, and then below that is the soul. So she traverses through these two worlds of the mental inclinations, and then the heart space, which is Tifereth in the middle there. And in her lies the sweet salt of manna, which is that milk. She has the ability to become that milk, or she is that milk, but only when she has been unveiled, which is what we are trying to get to, essentially. And the sun is her fire, is her radiance. That is the solar cross that is found on her chest on the tarot, and that gives her the radiance of being a full moon, of being that nourishing principle. And because the moon rules over water, like I said, the masses, it controls the tides, it's magnetic, it's highly magnetic, and that inherently means that it is attracting things. So I have talked about previously the magical workings of water, and how you can impregnate water with a wish, or you can magnetize water, and it also comes into our very being. We are made up of whatever percent water it is, and if you start to really break that down and understand what that means, you realize that you are a very, very magnetic being, or you have the potential to be very magnetic. The cooler that the water is, the more magnetic that it becomes. And as our resting body temperature is about 36 degrees, it actually makes us neutral in a way. And this is explained in Franz Barden's Principles of Hermetics. But the advantage and sometimes the disadvantage of being neutral is that you are susceptible to all sorts of things. You attract in your neutrality both good vibrations and bad vibrations. So that is why you must align yourself with the things that you want. You must be in control of your ability to absorb or ability to not react to things, because you have, like I said, you're not magnetic as such, because you are neutral, but you do have that potential, and you can become overwhelmed with certain qualities that find themselves attached to you because you are watery in nature. And it says in the thread, this magnetism is the power of attraction, which establishes the orbits of the planets and the astronomical order of the heavens. Water is emotion. It is waxing and waning. Water is the subconscious manifest. And just to talk about, going back to the book of Alchemy, it says, without faith in its actual existence, we may never discover it, for it takes confidence to persist through the preliminary stages of the work, through day-to-day practice, through the test period of trial, which show no outward proof of success. Here again, it is the intimation that the discovery is made by the mind alone, by our Mercury, for the beginning is a rational process, and the first glimpses are by the mind's eye in the light of reason. So again, going back to the Kabbalistic tree of life, we see her straddling that abyss, the line of the abyss, the mind and the soul. So we are still in the mental side of things. One of the powers of human self-consciousness is the ability to direct the unknown force of gravitation. Mercury, or Hermes, was the god personifying the form, determining power of mind. Magic is the art of using this power to congeal invisible, formless substance into tangible, physical forms. In most humans, this dwells merely in potential. Christian practice also begins with the acts of conscious attention, which enables one to direct and adapt modes of light vibration from the self-conscious level. So, water is the subconscious manifest, and like I said, the moon is nourishing, and being Gimel, she has the ability to turn that water into milk, and milk is the fatness of the earth, and it's the blossoming into matter, and she is nourishing. And her sister, the Empress, or Venus, is yielding in a way, but the High Priestess is unyielding. She will not just give to anybody. You have to work for it. And when you look at the tarot, she's sitting between Boaz and Jachin, and Boaz is in him, is potential strength, and Jachin is God prepares. So she will prepare you to eat those pomegranates that are behind her, and then if you look at the Empress, she has the pomegranates on her. And if we just think back to the statement of this magnet is the power of attraction, which establishes the orbits of the planets and the astronomical order of the heavens. If we look at the Fool, on his clothing there is these yellow circles, and then they have these red crosses through them, and that is the zodiac, essentially. So he has the zodiac on him. He has these cycles written on him, and it's also fate. Astrology represents the fate as well. So being in alignment with one's fate, being magnetized to one's fate. So the Fool is this mental proclivity, this mental fire, and then the High Priestess is the culmination of the gross elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And they within themselves follow the universal laws. The first was the fire, and that comes back to the statement of the first matter of the great work lies within man himself. Well, fire was the first element, and then from the universal laws, you need a polarity. So the polarity of fire is water, and then you need a neutralizer, and the neutralizer is air, and then you need the thing that holds all three elements, and that is the earth element. So that's the magician, and then the high priestess is the form of the matter that you can then use to create things, and that's where the number 6 comes in. That's where the chariot comes in, and where Cancer comes in, because the fat of the milk is fuel. So that's your fuel. That's what's going to fuel your desire, and it has to be digested, and it's digested in the stomach. And much like it said in Franz Barden's work, the abdomen is the water principle. It's that emotional realm, and it is ruled by the moon. So the stomach is the place where we come to understand things. It is the engine, where we can start to distribute the energy of the fuel, and it's the emotional home. And I have highlighted the word home because Cancer in the astrology represents the home, and it also represents the inner world, the very, very inner world, and it is directly across from the MC, which represents, it's on the MC-IC axis, and the IC is the inner world. The MC is the outer world. It's your reputation in the material plane, and then, or in society. And then the 4th house is the home, which is ruled by Cancer. And it's, our home is the place where we come to recharge, where we cook, where we gain our nourishment from, from our family. And this is why the moon rules Cancer. And then we have the chariot, and the chariot represents this movement. So there needs to be some form of movement. There needs to be something happening with this milk. It can't just sit there and do nothing. And this is where we see at the solstice, the 21st of June is the solstice, and that's when the sun moves into Cancer. So the sun is in a moon-ruled zodiac, and it is the height of solar energy, and the solar energy is the self. It's you. And if we think back to Aries is ruled by Mars, but the sun is exalted in Aries, or at least doing very well in Aries, in the house of the self. And the chariot is the blood and the gluten, or the blood and the semen, and Franz Barden talks about it as well. Now the question might arise, how and in which manner will the Akash, or etheric principle, show itself in the physical or material body? One who deeply contemplates on this will be able to answer this question by himself, namely that the etheric principle is concealed in its coarsest physical or material form in the blood and in the semen, and in the reciprocal activity of these two substances in the vital substance or vitality. So again, the vitality of the solstice, the vitality of the pinnacle of the sun's energy at that point. And the chariot is this movable throne, and he is moving across that abyss. So he's moving from Bina to Gabura, and because he is represented by Chet, and Bina is represented by the starry curtain that is on top of his chariot. There you'll see it, the curtain thing, and it's the very dark waters, it's the abyss, and it's the understanding, it's the black. And then Gevura is the red, it's the judgment. It's where you start to understand things, and one must go into the depths of the bowels, which is Bina, the darkness, to extract the medicine, and that is the darkness of oneself. And the Chariot reminds us that in order to cross the starry abyss of understanding, we must be nourished, stable, and enduring, like a general, because that is what the Chariot represents. He is a militaristic man. He is strategic, and he has to have control over the reins of the rational and the irrational. And those two sphinx that are at the front of his chariot represent Boaz and Jachin. In him there is potential strength, and God prepares. So yes, you must have that endurance. You must be stable and have control over these two opposing forces, the rational and the irrational. Your own mental proclivities, and then the divinely guided fate that you have. So the extraction is done by the black dragon, and black is this veil behind which all things lie. It's the occult. It is the veil of Isis, and this is why many do not complete the great work, or at least consciously, for it requires the adept to confront the dragon, and before the manna is white, it is red, which is that chaos. And Bina sweetens all severities and neutralizes their bitterness. One should repent, which means to understand and rectify all flaws, and that's what that darkness is. You must understand oneself. You must understand why you have done the things that you've done. You must understand who you are, and you must understand how to rectify all the flaws, and that can come through repenting, forgiveness. It can come through just perseverance, this strength, and you have to face all of these different elements of yourself. You have to face all of these shadow parts of yourself in order to complete this great work and overcome any doubts that you have as well, because that's where that the darkness lies as well. Is this dragon wants to instill doubt and fear into you, and these things, or these feelings I should say, come from doubt of oneself, from fear, from guilt as well, and from not being able to come into alignment or forgive oneself for the things that you have done, and the things that you have felt, and the path that you have taken up until that very point. And that's what the Chariot is kind of teaching you. And I feel as though this is something that many people face in situations of confrontation or self-preservation, because they feel like they have treated their fellow man unjustly, or they were too harsh, or they shouldn't have done those things. But in actuality, you have done exactly what you needed to do to preserve your time, space, whatever it is that was being threatened by somebody else imposing their will on you. So you just need to look at things objectively. And when we go to the next part of the post, there is the number 3, the sign Aries, and then I have Uranus there, because Uranus does usually represent the ether, and the ether is the principle of sound, of vibration, the Om. And then 6, Cancer, is the Chariot, is actually speech. So you cannot touch the divine in a way, but you can have this conversation, this internal conversation between the the abyss, and then the soul, which is where you're traversing through, and you're traversing through that those points through Gimel, through the form of first matter, and then you're also doing it through this internal working of what the chariot is bringing to this whole workings in a way. And the function that Gimel plays, or the function that the form of first matter plays, is the as above so below. And as it said, here again is the intimation that the discovery is made by the mind alone. For the beginning is a rational process, and the first glimpses are by the mind's eye. Without faith in its actual existence, we may never discover it, for it takes confidence to persist through preliminary stages of the work, through day-to-day practice, through the test periods of trial, which show no outward proof of success. So it is something that will start to work internally in this abyss state, in the mind state, and then it will transfer over into the soul state. And then as we go further and further down into the tree of life, in the other tarot, it starts to manifest itself more materially, because we do eventually reach Malkuth at the very bottom there. So at the solstice, the solar meets the lunar, which I said before, but here we have another, the representation of the solar, of the height of the sun being at its height in Aries, and then the lunar being in Cancer, the male and the female, and the rational and the irrational. And the chariot is the master of the four powers, and it is to go forward, and you must keep going forward. And there's this one more push to kind of break through, or to start to really alchemize this milk that is happening in the stomach. And that is where the hermit comes in, because those who seek the stone, the philosopher's stone, are miners, and you cannot do alchemy without immense control. And Virgo is an earthly sign with Mercury as its ruler. So Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, and it is at the height of its power and maturity in Virgo, because the adept now sees his blood not as red, but as liquid gold, or that white manna, and by understanding, he sees his body as light. So he is lit up from the inside. And to those outside, it seems that the one guided by the universal lux, which is that light, has the gift of prophecy, and the path ahead is divinely blessed. And this prophecy comes from just being guided by this fate, by this belief, this really strong belief that of success, and the prosperity that this success brings. And it is the Yod, or the hand of God, and the hermit is Yod on the tree of life, and that is just above Malkuth. So you have traversed from the mind space to the soul space, and messed around in there, in Geburah, and then Tifereth, and all the qualities that are in that soul space. And then you dip beneath the veil of Pekareth into the ego space, or I've talked about the ego before. People think it's a negative thing to have an ego, but the ego is actually just your personality. It's who you are. It's what makes you unique, and the joy of just being yourself. And when you are guided by this universal lux, by this light, this white light that is lighting you up, you are truly you. You are the true you. You have rectified all of those flaws within you. You have forgiven yourself. You have forgiven others. You have made the hard decisions that need to be made. You know, thinking back to the Chariot, again, he is a general. He is a militaristic man. He is strategic. He is composed, stoic, all of those things, and an introvert of sorts, you know, that deep reflection that is needed. And you know, that's where the Hermit comes in as well. He is also a deeply introspective character. And if we look at the Hermit as well, he is, I kind of want to go back to the Chariot a little bit as well, but when we look at the Hermit, there is a mountain behind him. There is an icy mountain, or he's on an icy mountain, sorry, I should say. He's on this icy mountain. And, you know, it takes great work to get to the top of the mountain, or to go through this very harsh, extreme environment, you know, and to go alone as well. That's the other thing. He is very much alone, but he's also not alone, because he is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is this god who is a psychopomp. So he moves between worlds, this world and the next, and he's actually a great friend of humans. He really does have a soft spot for us, and that's why he is Mercury in the alchemical work. He's a very integral part of this whole operation. And when we look at the Hermit card, the flame burns with no fuel or wick, lighting the way ahead, and one must turn inward to hear the whispering of Hermes. Again, that solitude, that isolation, allows you to be able to listen to that internal voice, because when you are surrounded by lots of people or lots of influence, it is difficult to find one's own way through the environment if you are constantly being pulled this way and that way, and so on and so forth. And I have a picture from Ready Player One, which is all about the alchemical work and finding one's own way, and finding one's own place in the world, or the metaverse, or whatever. And the person who created the metaverse says the keys aren't just laying around under a rock somewhere, or hidden in a dark room that's at the center of the maze. They're up here, I think is what he says. And he's, you know, pointing at his head, which is, you know, where the fire is. It's where, you know, all is mind, the universe is mental, and at the equinox comes the harvest, and the adept is at the point of the highest vibration, like I said, of Mercury, and thus Virgo is a feminine symbol. She is the most fertile, but the Holy Virgin, much like the High Priestess, and she is pure of intention. The Hermit is Yod, the hand of God that holds the stone of all things, or Zebeth in Jewish mysticism. So then we have the next quote from the Book of Alchemy. These manual operations are not performed by man's physical hands. They are carried on by the mind alone, or solely by the aid of Mercury in the field designated by the Yod, the hand of God. And that Yod, or the aid of Mercury, is back at that human imagination. And I have a picture there of a man with his hand, and his mind is connected to his hand. And that is what that occult symbol of the hand is as well, is of the alchemical work. And through the awareness of the great work, the adept can make modifications to the light in two places. So thinking back to the milk of manna, you know, it's no longer chaos, it's no longer red, it is it is white and that light, and you can make adjustments, modifications as you go through time and space. Obviously things are susceptible to change, and there is nothing solidified, and that is where you can make the modifications in the stomach, and that is in your emotions, how you react emotionally to things. And the nourishing milk is activated before being introduced to the blood, so you can make modifications there. And once it is already in the bloodstream, so to speak, which is that vitality again, which is what is pushing you forward. If you need to make amendments again, you do that in the lungs, which is that airy principle, and the blood is aerated with subtle forces combined with the milk. And the lungs, or the air, is that mental proclivity. It is the intellect. It's not so much the imagination, but it is the intellect. It is an idea, whereas the stomach is more thoughts. It is more the intuitive realm, and that is where the rational and the irrational come together. The moon being the irrational, the world of dreams, the subconscious, the imagination and emotion, and then the rational being Mercury, the lungs, which is the intellect, communication, education, things like that. And once you have done that, we get to the number 13 of the alchemical work, which is when you go to quench the stone, and you quench something to release it or to solidify it, and you are solidifying that mental fire. And one must return to the pool of Shaolin and dip his head, and that is where the 13th card, well, it's actually the 12th card, but it is Pisces, which is the shaman. And if you look at the Hanged Man, he has, his head is all lit up, and there's a lot of energy obviously flowing to his head, and it's no longer at his feet, even though his feet are yellow in nature, because you have got down to Malkut on the Tree of Life, but all that blood is rushing to his head now, and he's dipping his head into the pool of Shaolin, which is an actual pool in Jerusalem. And I have talked about Jerusalem before being the imagination, and the dipping of one's head is like the baptism. It's being reborn, and the cosmic mother, or Mem, and that is the letter that the Hanged Man represents. Mem is water, and the all is returned to her and is birthed from her, and we return to the moon, and Pisces is being ruled by the moon, and the waters are nourishing the eternal silence of the mystic. And the Hanged Man has this new perspective as well. He represents new perspective, and he is the shaman. Pisces is the shaman, and the veiled truth, the senses and beyond, and is the bridge between ego and spirit. If you actually look at the glyph of Pisces, it is these two lines which act as like a hyperbola, sorry, not parabola, but you can actually listen to the song Parabola. I think it is Parabola by Tool, which talks about Pisces. And 1 foot, I think it's Parabola. I'm just going to look this up. No, it's not Parabola. Parabola talks about Saturn. But it is the song Pneuma, which actually means spirit in Greek, I'm pretty sure, and it goes, we are spirit bound to this flesh, we go round 1 foot nailed down, and we are bound to reach out and beyond. This flesh becomes pneuma, or spirit. And it's just interesting to to see, we go around with one foot nailed down, and if we look at the Hanged Man, he has one foot that's tied up, and then he has one foot that is free, and we are bound to reach out and beyond, and we have to wake up, to recall, and to release the light. So if you want to listen to that song by Tool, it's called Pneuma, Pneuma, and just back to the post, if our soul is captured by the ego, meaning that our want and desire to, I must be very careful in how I explain this, but if we are doing things when we are not in alignment with who we actually are. So if you are not acting through truth, i.e. not being true to yourself, which is where that the chariot comes in. You must rectify all flaws, you must be truthful with yourself, you must understand yourself, know thyself. If you are putting on a facade, if you're putting on a mask, if you are not acting in accordance to who you actually feel that you are, then your soul is kind of suppressed, or that spirit is suppressed, and you will come in conflict with things, and that is the path of most resistance, is when you are trying to mask things, when you're trying to mask your true desire, when you're trying to mask your true self, when you're trying to shove down these things that you inherently are, and not trying to understand them or not embrace them. And that's when you start to suffer. But when you are serving, that is when your ego is captured by the soul. That is when your personality is captured by the soul. The soul is driving you. Your soul is driving your personality. You are the best possible version of yourself that you can be, because you are in alignment. You are, balanced in every way. The rational and the irrational. You understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. And again, coming back into what I said in about Virgo, through the awareness of the great work, and it all comes back to awareness. The awareness is what streamlines this as well. The more aware that you become, the more attention that you are paying to your environment, to yourself, to your inner workings, like I said, the more streamlined this process becomes, because it's just automatic. You don't have to really mentally think it through, which is what they talk about in the book of Alchemy at the very beginning. First of all, without faith in its actual existence, we may never discover it, for it takes confidence to persist through the preliminary stages of the work, through day-to-day practice, through the test periods of trial which show now no outward proof of success. And it's kind of like a mechanical thing for a while, and then you start just getting into the flow of things. You just start to really understand what it is that you should be doing, who it is that you are, and things just start flowing like water, and flowing like light as well. Yes, and then it says, here again is the intimation that the discovery is made by the mind alone, by our Mercury, for the beginning is a rational process, and the first glimpses are by the mind's eye in the light of reason. So at the very beginning, reason or rationality, mechanical workings, is kind of taking over, and then the more that you refine and do this working, the more natural it becomes, the more intuitive it becomes. Just thinking back to the stomach and the moon being there, and we have this motif of the turning lead into gold. Well, lead is Saturn, lead is the poison, lead is the black dragon, and the moon is the manna. It's something that is very easily tainted, And if the poison is taking over us, if we're not actually learning from it, if we're not doing something with it, if we are not growing from it, then it will just completely ruin the milk. It will just coagulate the milk and make it rancid, essentially. And you cannot work with something that is rancid, something that is just completely, gone in a sense. And so that's another thing in Vedic astrology. When people go through their sati, when Saturn is traversing close to one, or transiting close to one's natal moon, we see the poison with the moon, with the milk, with the form of first matter. And the sati is a period of one's life of immense transformation. It's very painful sometimes, but through this painful work, or through becoming aware of the alchemical process of rectifying all flaws and learning these tough lessons from Saturn, you start to move towards these periods of lasting fortune in your horoscope that come through periods of Saturn being further away from your moon placement. But that's something else I will talk about at a later time. But back to the number 13, or the shaman Pisces, which is the last zodiac as well. And the last zodiac just shows the maturity of one's spirit. And that's not to say that all Pisces people are mature. There are levels of maturity within each zodiac respectively, but in terms of spirituality, or in terms of the hero's journey, or in terms of the lessons that each zodiac teaches, once you get through all of the elementals of each zodiac, you reach Pisces, because that is essentially death. It is the doorstep of death. And in Vedic astrology, again, the nakshatras of Uttara Bhadabhadra, and Puva Bhadabhadra, Uttara Bhadabhadra, and Revati are the ambulance, essentially, the nurses, the doctors, the hospital, and then the deathbed. That's what they represent. It's a very it represents like the funeral cot. It represents the deathbed, and the deathbed is another colloquialism for dreams as well. When we go into a dream state, we are essentially dying, because we are entering another state of samsara, or another state of not being lucid, unless you become lucid in that dream state, and then you are reborn again through that lucidity. But that's what Pisces represents, is that spiritual ascension, that in-between state of life and death, the very end of the cycle. And that is why we see the hanged man represented as Pisces. His head, he's being baptized, he's being reborn, so to speak. And when you are serving, when your ego is serving your soul, instead of your soul under the influence of your ego, you enter that fifth kingdom, which is the eternal life. And that is where we reach the culmination of the alchemical work, because we go back to the Fool, because we start to realize where this potential comes from, where this inspiration comes from, where this divinity comes from. And I'll just go back to the first post, which is the first matter of the great work lies within man himself, the ether, and all is mind, the universe is mental. He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path to mastery. And then just to finish off this thread, we have the poem by T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning, at the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. So that is just a beautiful way to finish off, but I'm kind of not done in that, because that very poem describes Bina, or it describes the chariot, heard. You cannot touch the divine, but you can have this conversation, and it is between the stillness of the two waves, the starry abyss of Bina and Gabora. So, which is where you find that beauty, where you find the hidden part of yourself. So yeah, that is the great work through tarot, and I will just read that quote again. We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning, at the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea.